The Winter Palace is located in St. Petersburg, Russia. The palace was built and altered almost continuously between the late 1730s and 1837, although it was severely damaged by a fire and then immediately rebuilt. The green and white palace has the shape of an elongated rectangle, and its principal facade is 250 meters long and 30 meters high. The Winter Palace has 60,000 square meters of floor space and belongs to the marvelous of Baroque architecture and has 1,700 doors, 1,900 windows, and 1,057 lavish decorated halls and rooms in which are open to the public today. The palace was constructed on a monumental scale that was intended to reflect power in Imperial Russia and founded by Peter the Great. Peter the Great declared St. Petersburg as the beginning of his empire. It was contradicting at first because the area of this location was not suitable for a royal palace because it had harsh weather and it was very prone to flooding. Peter the Great's intentions for this structure was a primal location for communication through bordering countries and near the Neva River for the transportation of goods and other things. Also, being an imperial house of the family, it was a trading post as well. The construction began in 1754 and involved 4,000 people to form a late Baroque architecture starting with 460 rooms. The goal was for the visitors or imperial guests to be dazzled with the vastness of this palace and leave an impact on the viewers. In 1750, Empress Elizabeth began planning the new Winter Palace under the main architect of Bartholomew Francesco Rastrelli. This was a three-story building that was built on a quadrangle. Each of the four facades were decorated with pink backgrounds and gold stucco. There was 176 sculpted figures that line the roofing, built in the style of Elizabethan Baroque with Rococo elements, as well as the facades that line the exterior with a gold crown molding and vest the building with a play on light and shade. Elizabeth ordered the demolition of the building so it would blend in with the rest of the city. Rastrelli continued his construction in 1747 and ended in 1752. He added the addition for the Empress of 5 reception halls, multiple guest rooms, gilt wood carving, painted ceilings, and 700 windows, and other floor planning. The planning of the grandeur of the palace was a strict symmetry over the facades in a quadrilateral interior courtyard. The interior of the palace also consisted of 176 ornamental vases and allegorical statues. His artist's approach was labeled as focusing on the way that the light and the dark play with the reflections of his architecture. Within St. Petersburg, the architecture was not made of conventional materials, but of polychromatic rendering of turquoise, blue, emerald, sage green, rose, tangerine, yellow stucco, which formed a background to pure white relief ornate, touched with a fairy tale splendor. Rastrelli continues his leadership of the architecture in 1749, although it takes 4 years for him to finish his commissioned piece. However, lavish bedrooms of Elizabeth and the future Empress Catherine were changed by successful sovereigns, but the bedrooms of the empresses remained. The floor plan of the Winter Palace was organized in a classic late Baroque style. The first floor of the palace was dedicated for just the immediate imperial family, but however was still a location for court use and the use of antechambers for important meeting. Most of the rooms were home to some of Catherine's art collection that is now the Hermitage Museum. The rest of her collection was kept in the Little Hermitage Museum that was a private space for her when it was first made, and no one else can go into it. The state rooms were located in the north and the east wing, and private rooms were in the west wing. If you were to visit for an occasion, the proper route would be entering through the south facade under grand arches, and then you venture up the Jordan staircase and entering the staterooms. The south and east region was where Catherine would hold her private parties, dinner rooms, banquet parties, and lavish ballrooms exemplifying their wealth and grandeur. The Great Hall within the Winter Palace is the largest room and is the capacity to hold 5,000 people. The Great Hall of the Palace is one of the most prominent meeting areas within the palace and has ornate vaulting as well as a display of beautiful chandeliers. This part was also rebuilt after the fire in 1837. The fire broke out on the second floor and damaged most of the interior foundation, built for the empresses, and burned for 2 days unnoticed. After the fire, Vasily Strazov was appointed the lead reconstruction task. One would have viewed this palace based on your inclinations and partially the guide who would meet you to guide you through the palace and dictate the route depending on your class. If you were at a higher class, you would begin in the left entrance, and your guide would take you up the Jordan staircase, like I said, and into the middle staterooms. The Jordan staircase was a main creation that Catherine disliked because she has a neoclassical desire, but was designed by Elizabeth. The staircase was kept within the palace still and was used mostly for ambassadors attending imperial audiences. Elizabeth described as dedicating her main funds and states to lavish measure of this palace that contradicted all of Catherine's beliefs. The governmental decisions that were left under Elizabeth carried through to Catherine was a legislative and expansion of the serfs, including a law granting noble and the right to exile their serfs to Siberia, as well as funding the University of Moscow. Catherine had prominent education and theatric interests. She wrote playwrights, built a theater in the Winter Palace. She focused her main governmental policies on the Enlightenment, and she ordered people to search for art, buying entire collections and accumulating a private collection of 4,000 paintings, 10,000 drawings, which contributes to the large amount of art that gave way to creating the Hermitage Museum, which was Catherine's private sanctuary, like said before. The Grand Church is an also lavish gateway in the Winter Palace and is referred to as the Winter Palace Cathedral. This is one of the most lavish rooms designed by Rastrelli, located in the Piano Nobile in the eastern wing. Catherine was a very religious individual, and this chapel was built privately for the imperial family, promoting Catholic Orthodox religion. The theater, the staircase, and the Great Grand Hall are the most three defining elements within the palace. The Jordan staircase within the Winter Palace was damaged in the fire that had swept the palace in 1837. Like one said, Vasily Strazov was ordered to restore the staircase using Francesco Bartolomeo Rastrelli's original plans. There were some small changes, but he replaced the original gilt bronze handrails with white marble, and the original pink columns with granite stayed the same. The stair hall has an 18th century ceiling depicting the gods at Olympus and is decorated with the status of wisdom and justice. During the state receptions and functions, the Jordan staircase was most likely the focal point for arriving guests. When entering the palace through the ambassador's entrance in the central courtyard, they passed through the colonnade, ground floor, Jordan Hall, before ascending the staircase to the state apartments where they would be greeted by the imperial guests. Following the ball at the Winter Palace, there would be other events that would be held place within the antechambers and most likely in the White Hall. The White Hall of the Winter Palace was designed by architect Alexander Berlov to commemorate the marriage of Czarik to Maria of Hesse in 1841. This was a period of a larger building of the palace because it also suffered from the fire. The exterior of the palace was recreated to original 18th century style, but the interior was rebuilt into a different variety. The hall and adjoining rooms formed the suite and remained their private rooms after the accession in 1855. The hall is in classical style and its vaulted ceilings supported by Corinthian columns crowned by statues representing the arts. This was most likely a place where large gatherings would be held to show off their lavish and valued materials, and can similarly be compared to the Hall of Mirrors in Versailles. Today, as a part of the State Hermitage Museum, this room retains its original decorations.